So consciousness cannot be created nor destroyed. Consciousness changes form. Consciousness equates to energy. Energy equates to consciousness. Consciousness, from the most basic fundamental, are basic units of energy constructed within our holographic realm of experience. While there are many schools of thoughts, I would say that there are 15 dimensions of your conscious experience right now. Your body, your conscious field, works at and emits at a level of 15 dimensions. So why is it that most of us are just experiencing 2 dimensions? Because if you're in the 3-dimensional field of rational thinking and logic, as far as human conditioning and in the ways that you were born here, that those experiences are actually at a 2-dimensional field projected into the 3D levels of experience. And yet I say that there are 15 densities of our dimensions or dimensionality of experience. Now, scientists are more than aware of the human consciousness, and that human consciousness is energy. What I would say with mainstream science, they are not aware of how consciousness has been birthed. And it's unfathomable to think that consciousness has always existed. There was no birth or death. There was always form being changed. The challenge is becoming aware first, I would say, as far as the field of education is concerned, because of our levels of indoctrination, and this was including me as I was indoctrinated, not understanding my entire nervous system, how sensitive I was. I would go into a room or a place and would require me several hours sometimes to just stabilize and balance my nervous system. I could be around a certain person. It doesn't necessarily mean that that person wasn't bad. We could have been just shits and giggles, you know what I mean? We could have just been chilling and hanging out. Then I go home exhausted. And on one aspect, you could say, well, maybe that person was an energy vampire. I'm aware that that's also the case. But quite commonly, my experience was that I was still at a level of indoctrination. My gene codes were not yet activated over the years. These states of my experiences that allowed me to endure such tests at some point has given me no choice but to go deeper within my inner knowing. And in order to do that, at least I would speak from my experiences, that I needed to go within my construct of self. I needed to go into my meditative field. I was fortunate to have trained in a 12-animal system of Kung Fu, an esoteric system of Kung Fu that they would say is about 1,500 to 2,000 years old. I would say it's much older than that, but the construct of this particular style of Xing Yi Chuan, shape of the heart, mind, fist, or embodiment, or fighting style, became my anchor. Was it immediate? No, because I started training in 1989. So we're speaking decades and decades of me understanding my nervous system. However, within these perceivable collapses of my nervous system overriding, overstimulating, and then me digressing and me building up new chi, new forms of cultivating, culminating my electromagnetic fields. And as I always say, as a layman, when I was working with it in practicality as far as martial arts is concerned, I was highly aware that if I was able to construct this type of essential power, cultivate it, and emit it into another opponent in self-defense. As I start to understand the neurological sense of training as far as neurological or biological warfare that coexisted with the exchanges of my fist into another opponent. It took me some time to be able to see that dance between these different fields of energetics, and thus allowing me to not see the action potential, but to create sort of a palpable, solidified version of my process. So it took me time to cultivate a new mindset by reprogramming my mental conditioning, which was my journey and has been, as I stated, for quite some time. And of course, I couldn't do it alone. I needed opponents. I needed Kung Fu teachers. I needed students when I was a Kung Fu teacher, as an example. Then I became an acupuncturist, and I needed to treat sick patients. And I started to see that the people that I was attracting were people that I was attracting because I was attracting it. Sounds like I didn't make sense there, but I was attracting versions of myself that I needed to see. And it could have been 10 migraine headache patients at a time. It could have been 5 people with lower back pain coming to me back to back to back. I started to see synchronicities of exchange, and this small populace of experience that I started to attract made me ponder to say, what is this synchronicity? How is it that I'm attracted? How is it that I'm attracting this small collective of people who, with a like mind, have the same side effect or symptom, and they seem to all be coming to me? And I was always a word of mouth kind of practitioner. That's when I started to begin to see the different versions or different realities of how energy works in the overcell with the collective subconscious or unconscious, you would say. That we are indeed not separate, even if we think that we're separate. So as I start to crack that code or go into that rabbit hole, it became a level of Kung Fu as no different than if I was training a new form, right? I took it with grace. I took it with a level of authenticity to self. I knew that it meant something bigger than what my eyes could see and what my nervous system could not yet experience, because I was still going through, even until recent years, levels of sensitivity that helped me to understand very powerful souls that walk with very, very sensitive, meaning highly active, highly precise nervous systems, where there are people who can't even walk near a microwave oven. It took me some time to realize that a microwave oven, even unplugged, was making me sick and ill. I had to throw away my microwave oven several years back, and I said to myself, why would I give it away? It's almost like saying I'm giving somebody a nuclear bomb. And then I started to say to myself, am I being extreme, right? And but I started to follow what my heart was speaking and what my mind was not yet understanding, but at the same time, my mind was being trained, as I was giving myself permission to train my mind, to receive this data as these decisions I was making. And they seemed to be like not related to the Kung Fu that I trained in, but yet it was. See, the Kung Fu that I trained in was a microcosm of a blueprint, allowing me to expand the action potential within my microscopic existence and within the macroscopic field, which almost all of us were indoctrinated to believe that we have no control over. And the truth is, we do not have any control over. However, when you start to see it in a different aspect, that we are all interconnected, it was never a state of controlling the outside world. It was a state of understanding how you tend to control yourself or lose the ability to control yourself. Once you master that mechanism of control of self, as in control of your actions in violence, or you control yourself with decision-making processes, when somebody pisses you off and you're me in your mid-20s and you're living in the hood and you just want to prove it to yourself that you want to rip this person's head off without even hurting them. And to me, that was like a big ego boost, right? To say, I can actually take this person out without having to physically hurt them, but to make them feel that they got hurt as far as an ego is concerned. You see it a lot with now these days with the new age this Brazilian style of mixed martial arts, where somebody could take me, and I have no experience in mixed martial arts in that way. Somebody will put me in some chokehold, and they will offer me an opportunity to tap out before they do what? Before I get, before I lose oxygen into my brain, right? Thus, in this form, and if I train in that form, that would have brought me a different sense of humility. That will also have brought me to a sense of seeing that I can be as strong as I can, but there's somebody else that's half my size, right? Half my strength, half my potential, half my intelligence. And that person can literally submit me. And that person can also train to give their opponent the choice, the polite choice to what? Tap out. So I'm really grateful to be seeing this trend now, where a lot more people are training in mixed martial arts. Yet that's not even my style of Kung Fu. But that gave me and gives me a perspective of what I've always carried in my heart. And because my system of Kung Fu was not meant to tap people out, it was actually a system that was developed and intended for guerrilla style warfare, which was used in history in China. And along with Baguazhang, the only two, as far as I'm concerned, and please correct me if I'm off, it's just based on my experiences. I don't do a lot of research when it comes to history books. So again, please, correct me. I don't want to say correct me if I'm wrong, educate me, really. I would love to learn. But Xingyi and Bagua were the only two internal martial arts that has been appointed within systems of imperial palace bodyguards, really high-end security guards, and also in the military. And as far as my experience, the art of war, which is used now in very modern strategies when it comes to the military, anywhere from the army to the Marines, you name it. And they may have changed the names, and they may have changed the construct and how they teach it, but when you look at the soul of the mechanics of how the training is taught, then you start to see and open up and understand that much of it came from systems such as the art of war. What is it, Sun Tzu? Sun Tzu, or his book. Sometimes I confuse Lao Tzu with Sun Tzu, so I think it's Sun Tzu. Lao Tzu was an actual dragon in human form, by the way. And I believe Sun Tzu was the one that actually credited the mindset of a general when they train in Kung Fu. But before you're a general, you first have to be a soldier. So in Xingyi Chuan, you start training to be one of the first phases, which is what we would call within our school the wooden soldier phase. The wooden soldier is when you start developing whole body power, right? Just like maybe in the beginning of Brazilian martial arts, when you're learning how to use your whole body with physics and the path of least resistance, and you start to master a new power of your body that doesn't involve using your external musculature, for the most part, at least you train this way, right? But that's just the first phase. Most people fall asleep into that, or they fall in love with that, and I don't blame them. Which brings me back to what I'm trying to bring forth for here, is that most of us fall within the field of addiction to the love and the joy of training, relationships. Hopefully it's a job or career path that you're walking along and you are aligned with it. And the first phase is, how do you be at all with what you do, and making the macrocosm of your experiences outside of you and the money that you might have to make to live a life, let's say, whether you're living in the United States as an example, where at this point in time, money is what moves the world. And although money is created by the false light and the false agenda, I would say very evil factions that keeps us in this level of experimentation. But again, this is the first phase. If you start fighting the money, then the money won't come, right? If you start to fight every single person in front of you because you see that not one person, as an example, sees the way you see, then you can fall into the pit of becoming narcissistic. So again, a narcissist, a person who is addicted to drugs and alcohol, and just as commonly, if not more, people who are addicted to lust, equated in what you would say, or hidden within the veil of relationships, right? Saying, well, I'm in a relationship. This is not just lustful because it's between me and another party. This is not a judgment call. It's just saying that within the field and the construct of how one would still be gravitating within the 2 or 3 dimensional field, is that because of human conditioning and programming of the mind, that's what's governing your decision. It is the mind, subconsciously and unconsciously, that's holding these governmental or these governing programs that you would say, such as social norms, conditioning, religious beliefs, or even non-religious beliefs, right? Or even myself, like I'm a Kung Fu guy and I follow the way of Xingyi Chuan, or I'm an acupuncturist, right? So there are very constructive forms and constructs of conditioning. The challenge is that once you start to educate yourself to see that you are becoming conscious, or you are the conscious field that's constructing these masks. I like to call them each masks, each skill. If you're a carpenter, and that's a skill set, right? If you're a protector, because you might happen to work in law enforcement, that's a skill set. You're wearing that mask in the field out there. When I was a physician in Chinese medicine, I would wear a white coat, right? And then I graduated into more of like a bohemian style. Still, they were constructs. As I started to become more aware, it allowed me the opportunity to do what? And that is to reconstruct a new system, to deconstruct old dying systems that no longer serve my present moment. And once you start to become skillful in that dance, that becomes your Kung Fu. You don't need to train with me in Xingyi Chuan, or you should. Hit me up. But you don't necessarily need to, because then you start developing your own sense of Kung Fu, so that you can see and travel and to no longer fight within the constructs of this lower density field, right? And once you master that, you can now essentially get into the next phase of me going deeper and more in depth of what I'm about to share. It gives me an opportunity to sometimes rest and digress because I'm attempting to shorten up my videos. And by the way, my videos tend to be lengthy because my mind at some point when I opened up my first, when I opened up a YouTube channel, the whole point was I was thinking podcast. So I had like a podcast mentality. But I do get a lot of constructive criticism that my posts tend to be a little lengthy. But again, that wasn't my projection. My projection was grab a cup of tea, coffee. I love coffee and tea, in that order. And let's have a chat because when you're speaking with me, at least for the way that I love to work with people, is to, in a sense, that once we start to unravel, no different than reading a book, so that I can actually unravel myself when I go in depth with these conversations. It allows me the ability to calm and relax my nervous system because we're forgetting to have conversations. We're forgetting to have deep, wholehearted conversations and meeting people in public and just having this powwow just in the moment sometimes, because I might be on this camera. Next thing you know, somebody steps up to me because they overheard me talking, and it happens to me all the time. And I don't have this combative mindset with saying, oh my gosh, that's a Karen. And they exist, but I'll invite Karens anytime. I have no problem, because then what happens is that then I show them subconsciously, by the way, that I see through the mask. And I give them the opportunity to remind themselves as to why they created the mask in the first place. You see, that's when you start graduating beyond the judgment. That's when you start seeing that you are actually indeed in the 3D. I'm not actually speaking of anything that's higher yet. I'm still speaking on a 3D construct where most humans still have not yet graduated into being human, right? Which is saying that I exist in this field of comprehension versus a field of communication. So someone who is not aligned to comprehend at the degree that I'm speaking, it doesn't mean I'm higher. It just means that they're not at a level of coherence with me. So they're going to hear me as Chatty Catty or Chatty Marky. Nah, forget it. I'm being corny. So when you begin to breathe that when you're speaking to anybody outside of you, it's no separate than you are speaking to a version of yourself, because when you speak outside of you, it's no different than when you're doing a Kung Fu form. And to take it a little deeper, again, you would need to know me. If somebody came to attack me, straight up, if somebody came to attack me, it's a conversation for me. Does my mask change in the moment? Yeah, it's a 12 animal fighting system. So if I'm afraid for my life and I have nervous energy, which is possible, then I'll be like a monkey. Like I'd be like really quick. If I think it's life or death, I'll go into hawk, right? Because I feel like I have to maim. And I needed to get into those realities because that was my training grounds growing up, again, in neighborhoods that weren't that maybe I lived in and I was born into, but I was yet still not accustomed because I lived in fight or flight. I lived in that sort of fear factor. But that became my Kung Fu. That became my ability to understand the power. So going back to it and putting everything back together, when one is not aware of their power because one is not at the basic constructs of this, which I would say with our new school and our new earth, and school is outside for all children, this should be conversations. This should be playful conversations, right? By the time the child's 7 years old, they should be already being able to comprehend me at this level. Why? It's because we need to be able to see that we are able to fill their cup, no different than an adult, because we changed as parents. Let's say if you're a parent, you don't have to be a physical parent, you're a parent to anyone who's in front of you, right? Is that you see them as old souls. And not all of them are old souls, but when you see one and they have that level or the ability to be in coherence with you, and it's usually a lot easier when they're young, if they don't have one of these parents that are like being a bad Karen or Carol in Spanish. Carolina? I don't know. I'm trying to make it up as I go. Is that, again, human conditioning is what gets in the way. Human conditioning is what limits us and our action potential, which is very powerful. This power is very, very sacred. Sacrum. My name is Marcus, by the way. And every single letter in my name, M-A-R-C-U-S, is actually sacrum, by the way. S-A-C-R-U-M, M-A-R-C-U-S. So I am sacrum. Hello, nice to meet you. I'm a living, breathing sacrum. So most of us cannot handle the power of the sacrum. So it leads us to conditioning of how we release that energy with saying we have an overactive libido. And yes, the lower organs of the lower extremities are built to receive that energy, because that power that we possess, or the power that I'm speaking of as I'm unraveling with these potentials of seeing power in a new light that many are not conscious of, is that it is the power that actually generates sexual energy. Sexual energy in Chinese medicine is the energy that's secreted, almost like a fluid-like energy that's secreted from your jing, or your essence. They would say from your soul, that became dimensionalized and palpable into your nervous system. So many of us don't need to train in Qigong or the Vedic system. Many of us came very evolved with our system of being able to receive or being born with energy. Yes, it's genetics, but it's not limited to genetics. Actually, genetics and the genetic code, on the contrary, is what can hinder you, block you, or place you in a pause from expanding to higher dimensional fields of your very existence. See, I'm still speaking of the 2 and 3D because I know this to be vital. It's the most important aspect of being a human. I can teach you very advanced Kung Fu forms. It means nothing other than a dance, and freeing yourself. So it might mean a lot in that aspect. Okay, so you got me on that one in case you were thinking like that. But if you're looking to expand within the cracking the code of the field of like how masters were able to literally place their hands on you and not have to punch at you or attack you like that and disrupt your energy field, right? Well, there are a lot of fakers out there because it's an actual real thing. But most people don't have it, and they fall into almost like a false level of gnosis, or a false level of, or a level of, it's a form of spiritual psychosis. I'm not gonna lie. In the Kung Fu world, I did experience and meet people that had not graduated to that higher level, because one of the main tests is that you find yourself in a fine line of spiritual psychosis. And I can argue that. And I found myself in fields of that, but I was very conscious of it. And I'm grateful to my ancestors and you would say my higher self, because had I not had that sense of self-education, I would have easily, I would say somewhere in my mid to late 20s, had fallen into a sense of spiritual psychosis and narcissism, but like in the worst way. And I would have hoped that nobody judged me. I would have pissed off a lot of people though, right? So I would have ended up in spiritual jail, just like as I mentioned in my last video, by the way. I went more in depth with that as far as spiritual jail, being constructive. Again, look at me now, and let's say that was a version of me, right? Then like spiritual jail would have meant that I found myself in that false sense of gnosis, in spiritual psychosis as an example, which kept me locked in within that within that interdimensional phase and level, but in the lower construct of the lower mind, which is again 1, 2, 3D within that field, right? So we all know that if you ever speak to any elders when it comes to Kung Fu, I mean real Kung Fu practitioners, is that when they teach students, you would see them still train the basics, because it's within the simplicities of the basics where you would engender. My Puerto Ricanism sometimes comes out, even though English is my first language. You engender the dragon body, right? The dragon body is not just your external musculature, but is and bringing into a liveliness your fascial tissue, as they're saying it more in modern times. It's more depth than that. But people are now graduating into understanding the fascial tissue, and that's a big yay for me. But the fascial tissue all the way from the eyeballs to the top of the head, to the toes, to the fingers. And believe it or not, think of like a spider and an activated spider web that's always changing within the fields of neuroplasticity. Your body's highly neuroplastic. And these fascial tissues, which are high conductive H3O2 liquid fibrous form material. Some people even say that it's plasmic within that field, but again, it's like structured water. I say it's structured crystallized water, because we are crystal beings, we are carbon beings, right? And some of us came here, evolved more crystalline or crystallized as far as the vessels, as far as the vessel's graduation into the higher embodiment, which is going to be required for this new earth, as the sun is enlivening Mother Earth the same, and humans are not separate. We are interconnected within this vibrational field, because it's vibration, sound emitted, that starts to engender light. You will not engender any light codes at that frequency in that field, almost like to the level of a celestial being that is not in a embodiment. So it's easier for them, because they do not have like the density field or the embodiment, and they do not care to at all. They are fine where they're at, but they're not separate from us. They're interconnected to us. They are versions of us. We are versions of them. We are breathing the same source energy field that is constantly morphing, constantly changing form. But we fall in love with Marcus here. We fall in love with the face, the construct. We fall in love with the illusion or the idea of what I bring to the table. But if you look at a lot of my videos, and I don't do this on purpose, but I'm purposeful, right? Everything that I do has a purpose, and it may not always show even for myself right at that moment, but when you strive to align yourself to your highest potential, highest good, even when you fall and you do something that's not constructive, it becomes part of the equation to the aspect as to why one would, or let's say why I chose to incarnate here, right? Which is to be a living, breathing vessel and to celebrate myself with you all, but not separate from the grass that I sit on, the park that the hill of this park that I'm just like hanging out on. When I'm speaking and seeing black bears, I'm not saying that I'm not scared, but I love when I see them because they're beautiful. And again, if it's my time to go, it's my time to go. You know, I cannot see myself and walk in this path anymore with those fear constructs. And yes, they exist, but it goes back to what I'm saying. It's that once you start understanding, it's not that you can't die, it's that we are learning, I would say that we should be now starting to learn to reconstruct the meaning of what death and dying means, right? The other day I saw a video of somebody actually taking the word soldier, and I didn't even think about it. If you cut it in half, you have soldier, soul as in soul, right? Dire, D-I-E-R. So it's like almost like a dire need for a soul to dismember or disembody himself or herself or another being for the fight of something, of a conditioning that was brought to us to say that this is how we protect our vitality, is to fight against the evil, bad people. So once we start seeing and not judging those constructs, because I know I was a soldier many wars, and I was righteous and I was virtuous, and even up until maybe 20 years old, I looked at myself very dark, and when I was in my darkness and my dark side, and it had to be when I was thinking and experiencing within my dark field, my lower density mind, right? When I was probably naturally lustful, being a kid in college, right? I had all this energy, and I was training diligently in the same system of Kung Fu. I'm going to speak as a testimony. I don't speak this to anyone. It's the first time I'm even exposing this information. But I had a lot of sexual energy, a lot. I still do. And again, but listen, because I was born with that level of vitality, and I knew that. But the training that I endured, that I was actually building more of the action potential. And my Kung Fu teacher, I'll go by his nickname, Talim. He's no longer here. Passed away in 2012. They also call him Big T, or T. He was a big man. He was 6'2", 6'3". I would say 280 pounds. So I was like here to him, or something like that. I don't know. I was fortunate to have trained and always have trained against people who were like maybe 2 or 3 times my size. So that helped a lot. That helped me to reduce and to like eliminate my fear of really big people. Not knowing it's like the little ones that are like the scary ones, you know. You look at MMA, they'll take you out, man. The bigger you are, that little cat will, and MMA will take your kneecap and bend it, make you tap out before they break your knee. It's true, right? And also enabled me to have to train differently in Xing Yi Chuan, because now I know this is, back then people fought differently, right? Maybe they body slam you, but it'd be to knock you out, to knock out your teeth. Now it's like to tap you out before they like choke you out. So the fighting system, because of trends, have indoctrinated us that and you see the difference. You see the difference because now the chances are that somebody's going to want to wrestle me, and they're going to be really strong. All this kung fu in the world, if I didn't cross train and tap into my own system that has MMA potential capacities, but we didn't open up those books within our system, within our form, because it wasn't required. And that's, again, a 2,000-3,000 year old style of kung fu, so almost impossible to train everything within 50 years. You know, you would have to reincarnate here many lifetimes. So you go by the changing times. So you open up maybe new opportunities and possibilities. Now my teacher's not here anymore, you see? So I didn't have the opportunity of being indoctrinated by this old system and learning to actually anti-grapple, which is actually Xing Yi Chuan, an anti-grappling system. But again, the system that was taught to me, and this goes together with what I'm saying, is that I wouldn't know how to graduate into more an advanced aspect to what's already programmed in the system, but I needed to do the work. How? Maybe somebody tried to choke me out, which didn't happen. And if it did, my feelings would have gotten hurt, my ego would have gotten hurt, and it would have forced me to go into a cubbyhole for maybe 2 or 3 months, right? And in anger, I'm gonna get them next time, you know. But that's how, like, a lot of us young cats, young men, you know, I'm young as hell, you know. we need that real life experience. Some of us don't want it, and I'm not saying every single one of them. I'm not saying every one of us, but we do. And if we're not learned that at a young age, yeah, we become chicken shit, you know. And I'm not calling somebody a chicken shit, but I'm saying is that we do. We just won't express that outwardly, so we start pumping up more iron, and we do somewhat of a martial art, and then we develop almost a fighting stance to not feel like we're a chicken shit anymore. You see where I'm getting with? Once we start graduating from all of these things and all of this programming, that we create an entire life. Imagine me creating an entire life so that I could walk to not be a chicken shit. Then this video wouldn't exist. Right? And then with my trials, or what you would call errors and editing, and sometimes I'll say things because I'm talking to a camera. It's part of the evolution of Kung Fu. You can't be shy. And if you are, then you work through the shyness and the timidity by working through that. And a past video, timidity, shyness, or being timid can also mean weak gallbladder, weak liver, or you may have a timid bladder. You ever had, I think this is more common with men, like some men cannot pee when somebody's next to them. That's a timid gallbladder. Guys, you know what I'm talking about. And other guys are like, you know, fuck, I don't care. You know, but they had the luxury of being born with a whole bunch of brothers. That's what happened. They trained at a young age. You see what I'm saying? Most of the time, that's what's happening. Once we can start cross-examining, self-evaluating, and seeing things as far as the level of education is concerned, and again, you would have to be in coherence with me, right? Now, there has to be something about you and me, and a version of me and you, a future self or a past self of you. Maybe you're wiser, right? But you're seeing something. You're being reminded about the fire of this guy who's 50 years old, right? Unimaginable. At 50, I should look like, I don't know what that even means anymore, but I couldn't give you a comparison, sorry. Hit me up in 20 years, then it'll be easier to say 70. I think, I don't know. I feel like 70 means nothing. I'm gonna be honest, because the mind is that powerful. Once you start to graduate, then you can work towards a goal. If your goal is to reverse engineer your aging times and in your aging way, yeah, anything and everything's possible once you start to graduate from the rational, logical thinking mind. And it becomes a sense of having to be curious. And to be curious means to have vision of something that you desire, a construct. And the curiosity is going to give you the chi. That's when you start to transform that sexual energy that I mentioned, that jing, and that instead of using it in lust, right? Or versus using it with somebody who you're co-creating with a partner, that's different. That's different. But most people have a rare opportunity, if not ever, meet that certain type of a life partner where it's really yin to the yang, where you both co-create together. It's not necessarily just having babies, but to opening up the two conscious fields where the two souls become in union. So it's no longer sexual energy, it's opening up a portal or portals or dimensions. You become each other's drug, and there's a dark side to that. You can end up codependent, you can end up so many aspects, the jealousy, all of these things. It doesn't matter how high you are, right? But again, that's the level of Kung Fu that one must attain within thyself. No judgment of self, no judgment of others. If you find yourself being that person to somebody else, then be kind, respectful, be in authority, and you break up with that person, right? With love, or maybe that person is like that with you. Instead of calling them a narcissism, because maybe they were, it took two to tango. Maybe you were in your lowest field and that person had to kill you, or kill a version of yourself that could no longer walk your new journey. And if that was, let's say that was me in my circumstance, and if I didn't graduate, I wouldn't be able to speak with a level of peace and to expand on such possibilities, so that I could bring the joy of such a video such as this. This brings me the same levels of joy as if I was speaking in front of an auditorium, or if I was treating a client with acupuncture, or if I was working with distance healing, or I was just chilling and just being by myself. That's, to me, a way, if I was able to paint a picture, as me knowing thyself, right? Resting, doing nothing, is a version of knowing myself. If I need to rest for 3 months and not do any type of Kung Fu and shut everything down, and when I say shut everything down, I do this. I will shut down social media. I may not even tell anybody else. But again, indoctrination and systems of the new age of texting and social media would say that I'm evil or there's something dark when I actually ghost them. But if they actually knew me, they know that I'm working towards something from within. Because I'm not going to go into a list of all the people I know and start calling them to tell them I'm about to do this, if Spirit's telling me to do something different. But this is a different story. That's a different video. But it doesn't exist in my life now. Why? Because I cultivated something new. See what I'm saying? So there are no feelings that I will hurt in that way, because I know how that feels on one aspect, and I wouldn't want someone else to experience that. But if I start to feed that and try hard to do that, then now I start to exhaust myself. And I'm not being authentic to myself, and then I will attract that experience. Because when you start to work on something of being a good man or a good woman, versus just being transparent, being comprehensible to self, being in coherence with all, just the thought of that is so liberating. That is the field that you must find yourself when you arrive at a level of meditation, which is a state of consciousness. And within that realm is when you start to expand the possibilities of the 15-dimensional field that you already coexist as. Everything that I just mentioned, which sound like it was all in different places, it's actually a blueprint of the average human being, maybe a quarter of that. And maybe it's just my experience. But it's a real thing, and I have to speak on that, right? Is that people get caught up in the very sauce of the pasta that they're making, pasta sauce. and then life becomes all of that. And maybe that's okay. That's okay. Maybe you are a 7 to 9, 9 to 12 dimensional being, and you're at peace with that. That's your flow. A lot of these like interdimensional beings, I don't mean extraterrestrial, like you would say the good Pleiadians or the good Arcturians, as an example. They may sit freely in 5 to 7, 9, or 11D because they're working within that field. Why are you going to judge them? Why are you going to judge them? Why are you going to call them evil? You're sitting freely in a 3-dimensional field experiencing 2. You don't see them cracking jokes on you, or maybe they are. I don't know. Maybe they were cracking jokes on me more, like saying, yo, man, you didn't even know who the hell you are. Now you do. Now we can laugh together. So again, we can laugh together so they could crack jokes. That's permeating the fields of judgment. This is permeating the fields of lust. This is permeating the fields of just saying I'm going to require to be in a relationship with someone. That sounds exhausting as soon as I say that, as far as having to be in a relationship so I can satisfy my lustful agenda, because I have all this chi, all this vitality, all this jing to emit, to transmute, to transgender different changes beyond the yin and yang construct, beyond the dichotomy of our existence. And if I keep going deeper, of course, I'm going to sound crazy to a lot of people who are within that 2 to 3D level of construct, who have not at least graduated to the first level of MMA, the first level of my style of Kung Fu, to the first level of just respect all beings. First level of even like the real military, like the Marines, man. You know, they are, a lot of them that I met from the Marines growing up. I met a lot of Marines, a lot of brothers, a lot of sisters over the years. I used to work, a lot of people don't know, but I used to work security for the Department of Defense, BAE Systems, Honeywell. Almost started to submit I almost submitted my application to Picatinny Arsenal in New Jersey. I had, even though I was not in the military, but I had secret classified clearance for about, what was that, 4 years? Is it a 4-year thing before it expires? I don't remember. 4 or 7 years. Anyway, so I had a 4-year secret clearance working in New Jersey for the Department of Defense, contracted. And this is where I met a lot of badass veterans, and I felt so small. I was like, damn, I wish I was on the other side already, of being that veteran, so that we can chat more. But you know what? We cracked the code with each other. They saw a version of myself because, again, I can speak with past wars, not speaking to them in that way, but I can read their soul and they read mine. And when we get past that first level of construct, that I'm not in the military and they didn't see me as anything less, right? Especially in the Marines. From my experiences, is that they want Americans to just be Americans, the freedom to vote, freedom not to vote. And that's why they fight for the country, or at least that's why they end up going to fight for the country, because they didn't know the word soldier yet. I know it. You could kick my ass later. If you are working on expanding your density field of consciousness, which is measured in dimensions, then it's to understand the levels of what's palpable to you and what's not. And I've been fruitful in my experiences with meeting people who are leveling up in that way and may not even be training the way I train. They might be just lifting a finger, because it's all in the mind. Graduate from the mental construct, not by trying to kill it, not trying to chop off the ego. That's the first phase. That's the military phase. That's the wooden soldier. Because eventually, once you realize you're a wooden soldier, take an MMA fighter, they're going to take out a wooden soldier 10 out of 10 times. Then the wooden soldier graduates with MMA. So it's in a sense like mixed martial arts, right? Then once you start graduating and you start expanding possibilities, because you're seeing that there are many routes to this, there are many ways to this, then you graduate into the second phase, right? I would say 3 phases. The first phase is wooden soldier phase, where your mind is teaching the body and your mind gets high, dopamine high, literally, with the powerful body that you develop, right? The powerful cardiovascular system, the powerful neurological system, to be able to walk a certain way and to even be able to emit your authority, man or woman alike, with presence, right? Not having to fight anything because you just know thyself in that way, right? That's level 1. Level 2 is when you allow your body now to teach your mind. That's when you start allowing your lower vibrational field, the lust, for a lot of people, porn, right? All of these things where they're using that as a way to emit all of this excess energy, and they are not yet graduating to, because most of the time they don't know. But even more than that, they may not have the activated genetic codes or the DNA codes that might be putting them in a pause. Then you find this video. It's not that I'm educating you, it's that you are ready to free yourself from the pause, and now you're graduating to videos such as this. You see, when the teacher's ready, the student arrives, but when the student is ready, the teacher appears. It's the same. We're both ready. We are both one right now as we are speaking. For real, that's how I see it, and that's how I live. And with all the training and conditioning and all of the lustful lives that you've lived, or you felt like you should have lived, it's still in the mind. Then you start to bring it back together. Maybe you were the narcissist, or maybe you were the victim of narcissism. Maybe you went to jail because you fought a lot of crime, a lot of wars, and you did a lot of bad things out in the street, right? But there's something in you that felt like you were the warrior, right? And I know that because another story, I was a bail bondsman in my early 20s. So I used to arrest people for a living, but these were people that were, a lot of them were friends. It's that they broke their bond. They were supposed to go to court, and this is like the early 2000s, by the way. And I got pissed off when I had to arrest them because I knew them, but it was either that we arrested them because they were like silly. They always wanted to run. That was another program that we were running, Cops and Robbers, right? The funny thing is that in New Jersey, at least in Patterson when I grew up, all the drug lords, or the kingpins in drugs, that ran the drug community, they respected the two beings. Well, at the time, they didn't give two shits about the cops, except for the ones that were working with them that were dirty. But their lawyer and the bail bondsman. Why? Because we were the two people that could get him out of jail, and also the prostitutes that were making money. They called my boss, right? Because I worked for him, but I was licensed by the state of New Jersey, and so when the bail bondsman came, it was like grandpa with a gun coming in. It was like the mad respect. So when they ran, it was like personal, because you got to understand that there are people that signed off for them, like Mama Bear, their wife, their children. People signed up, so it became personal to them. So they really didn't want to get caught, and they didn't have money, and they skipped bail, right? Or they just didn't want to go to jail. So again, I worked within that lower dimensional field, and I honor that. I honor that because that was necessary within my imprint, so that I was able and capable to not just collapse the mind, not just to become like an elder, but to open up genetic codes, to open up the DNA codes to higher dimensional possibilities, not omitting my lower dimensional life as Marcus exists, but quite possibly to confuse most of y'all that have known me most of my life and have only seen certain versions of me because I was like the hidden dragon, and now I cannot. It will make me ill if I am the hidden dragon. All that dragon body potential that I've been activating now has to permeate and through my vasculature, and due to my blueprint construct and my ancient remembrance, is to voice my truth, not as truth, to voice my truth as an artist, as a singer, as a bird that chirps, or as an owl that just gazes at you with intent. That even the owl that does not chirp emits a field of communication through variances of comprehension that can only be tapped in if you start to open up your DNA codes, as to quite possibly that you can communicate with them as I do, not just owls, but all species. I don't know why owl came. Oh, I heard a bird that sounded like an owl, so the owl came to me. So maybe that's for you too. Somebody's been having an affinity, or maybe that's one of your spirit animals, an owl. Ooh. It brings me to level 3. I mentioned level 1, level 2, and level 3. Level is the mystical side. It's like the side where you never meet anyone at that level. As I was growing up, I never met them. Or every time I would meet them, they would end up dying. So it might take, they died at a young age, but I think it was because they graduated. They didn't need their vessel anymore. They may not have known that though. Well, they know now. I know. So that's what's important. I'm in this vessel, so I need to know that now. Is level 3 is that you have graduated level 1 and you graduated from level 2. Again, it's the body teaching the mind. But for the body to start to teach the mind as far as a new embodiment is concerned, as if like now that you're activating your crystalline body, and now your frozen DNA is starting to melt because the sun codes are allowing us to enliven a new vibratory action that's already here. Everybody's waiting for Jesus to come. It's already here. We must emit at that frequency. The frequency is eternal, it's constant. It just was that we were in a very dense time. It felt like it was just not here at all. And that was through ancient technologies of this experiment, of this imprisonment. But once you start seeing a prison being a prism, and you start understanding how energy works and how dichotomy keeps us separate, first separate this way and separate that way, hence you have this, which is a code for entrapping, for keeping you within the vessel and keeping you trapped and making sure your heart's connecting to that. That's why they entail that if you are whatever you are, right? That is that. But if you're a mystic, then you can do that to maybe find your center. And it's just to a person who works with sacred geometry, it's one code, one of 10 zillion codes that are out there that has been used against us because it didn't require very attractive or intelligent codes to humans who chose to incarnate here as new souls, as far as the human experience, in a place that has been and continues to be an energy harvesting center. So we can't change the harvesting center, but when we change us, that's level 3. When you start to change your individual sense of self and you start to expand your conscious field and you become consciously aware from all your experiences, and you can actually graduate from level 1, level 2, level 3, to fear, to lust, to knowing, and to the freeing of your knowing, is to now realize that breath was always the carrier to your innermost truth and was never limited to the capacity of your lungs. That's a riddle. I love y'all.